Get your sense here. I know it's hard to see. Come on in. Yeah, we're all on.
Yeah, you're all on there.
Who would have thought phones doing stuff like that?
No?
They don't use it for I know.
Every time you'll use a phone with a phone to see what you can do all the time.
Send a boiled ham sandwich and a pint of milk.
Coal, the most important fuel in use today. Great Britain has the richest coal seams in the world, and this basic wealth played a major part in industrial expansion. The men use the downcast shaft. The cage holds 20 men at a time.
The whole structure is the cage. Yeah. That's the saying is when we march back into work, back up straight through this little main gate here, right up to the manager's office, right on the left. Can you recognise that big fat head?
Big fat.
Like a bowling ball.
$20,000 jobs have been lost in Britain's coal industry in the past year. The Coal Board say it's less than that. But after simmering resentment with occasional outbursts of violence over the past few months as pits are closed, the issue suddenly sharpened this week. 56,000 men in the Yorkshire Mining District, the biggest, most elite group of Britain's miners and Arthur Scargill's personal power base, have been called out on strike next Monday. The immediate cause of the strike is the closing of one pit for economic reasons.
Can't imagine in Castleford how big it was and how important it was. My dad and my granddad and his dad have all been miners. It ran through, it blood in veins at area. So it's always been there, always been part of my life.
Yeah, just went straight from school. Finished on the Friday, started on the Monday, if you like.
So how old are you then?
16. My granddad never wanted me to go into mining, so it was kind of, he died just before I left school. So he kind of died at the right time, if you like. I think he'd have done everything that he possibly could to stop me. But in many of the community, it was the main employer, it was the hub, you know, it was the centre of the village, because most of them were based in villages, you know, and it gave a lot of work to a lot of people, and you know, it might sound awful this, but some people that wouldn't have been employable at that time, you know, there were people with learning difficulties who worked on pit top on surface, you know, where probably wouldn't have got jobs elsewhere, but the pits looked after them, you know, they took them on and they gave them some kind of meaningful employment, and you know, they got a good living out of it.
That last year at school, we were either shipped into mining or forces or chemical plants that were around Castleford. And I see it now, I didn't see it then. I suppose we were a bit led anyway, because in 1974 they just won some good pay rises and agreements with Coal Board and government. So money were good, and we marched off, 16-year-old, and we felt like we were contributing to community. I think it felt like you'd got a very worthwhile job. If you try and imagine in 72 and 74, if my dad and his mates went on overtime ban, everybody else went on 3-day working. That's how critical coal was. They had to keep that flow going.
At the time, there were a lot of Middle Eastern unrest, and you could not depend on oil. Coal provided a good, cheap solution to energy, although they wouldn't do it now because of the pollution, but at that time people got cheap electricity and gas through coal mining.
Modern coal mines built and run on the lines you have seen here, will stand the test of time and guarantee a steady supply of coal for home use and for export to many countries overseas.
It was a rough environment. We're working in a coal mine, you know. It's not like working in a supermarket. It's a rough, dangerous environment, but it was also an environment where there were a tremendous amount of comradeship, and if you met friends, you were friends for life.
We'd been conditioned that was his job for life.
Yeah.
When I joined, there was a big campaign going on. Join the coal mining, NCB, Jobs for Life.
They were on buses, weren't they?
Yeah, and the irony of it was we found a newspaper in Pit Bottom with the actual advertisement. This was a week or so before Pit shut. You know, so I wish I still had that now. Yeah, Job for Life. We thought that starting at 16, 17 year old or whatever, that was it. We'd go through until 65.
Steel-capped boots and a safety hat for head protection.
What kicked it off were Corton Mud Colliery, which were producing prime quality coking coal for the steelworks, and they had somewhere in the region of 80 years coal reserves left. But you were competing against subsidised German coal and subsidised American coal, so they were closing Corton Mud, not because it had run out of reserves, it were being closed purely on economic reasons.
That can't be right.
Well, how many pits closed in Britain after your last mining strike in 1973-74?
The plan for coal did not envisage pit closures. It only envisaged closures due to exhaustion, something which we naturally accept. But the closure programme now taking place is not only closing pits, which have got vast reserves of coal in them, but even closing units which are tremendously economic. We've just closed a coking plant in South Wales, which was making about £1 million to £1.5 million profit per year. That really is nonsense, even in economic terms.
What was the increase in
So we decided we would take a ballot. In the event of a colliery being closed on economic grounds, we would call a strike.
Join us in the fight, and victory will be
NUM President Arthur Scargill says he would expect miners to respect picket lines at their pit, even if they're not on strike.
Nottinghamshire miners decide they'll stay at work and they'll cross picket lines. John Thorne reports.
The Miners' Union probably wouldn't have picked Corton Wood as the last ditch in its fight with Mr McGregor. But when the coal board said it would have to close within a couple of months, the miners were incensed. Pickets set up at the gates and the Yorkshire coalfields struck in sympathy. Soon Scotland followed, then Kent and South Wales. But that was by no means all the British coalfield. Many miners, notably those in the productive Notts coalfield, don't see Yorkshire's fight as theirs. They want a national pithead ballot before joining the strikes. But the Yorkshiremen want Notts out now. That's why miners been fighting miner. And that's why 8,000 police have been drafted in to help men get into work.
So we started picketing in Nottinghamshire and that area, but not everyone agreed with the strike, but you abide by the majority. Oh, that's how we were brought up anyway.
But yeah, but then, I mean, there was some fun at that time, even picketing with police. There's a picture of me acting about laid on floor and they're pretending to kick me and it's a joke. We were having a bit of fun and banter with them, but it wasn't many weeks later they were doing it for real. As soon as they got numbers and riot gear in right place, that's when they started. It's when they really stuck boating. And Orgrave's a classic. That's the place where we were marched into a field that they chose and set up. The only way I can describe it is when you look down road at this mass force of blue and black.
I don't know the exact figures of how many were there police-wise, but it was certainly a few thousand compared to about 400 or 500 any of them lads. And, you know, you became aware that something was going to happen. Les and John, like I said, they were always at the front. I was with my mates in middle, just having a laugh, really. You know, and then all of a sudden all hell let loose.
At first, police horses tried to shepherd the miners out of the convoy road.
I was looking, and then it was like an almighty body of men had run front back. And then before you know it, you would bang up face to face. And I remember turning my head, and there was just a massive bang in my face. Split me lip.
Miners surged forward against the riot shields. Policemen fought with truncheons under a barrage of stones and missiles.
And all the while, the lorries, 35 of them, swept in procession into the plant.
We saw that if we could stop coal coming in and going out of Orgreave, it would decimate round about the area where there were a lot of steelworks. So that was the idea. That was the tactic behind it. And when you went, they I'd make sure that that were never going to happen. That were never going to happen in a month of Sundays.
By mid-morning, the picketing had turned to rioting. The police hadn't lost ground, but more riot squads were needed as reinforcements in the front line as the pressure increased.
They had the police lines, probably 10 deep of police.
A gap opened and the horses galloped in.
The police horses that came out, and then when people scattered, they saw it as an opportunity of arresting people.
Police horses are the most feared weapon in the present armoury. But it's the riot squads that follow up to make the arrests. And today, on the fields around Orgreave, the police became involved in some of the most vicious hand-to-hand fighting of the entire miners' dispute.
You know, lads were going down railway bankings and everything to get away. It was quite a scary day, and like I say, how some really didn't get injured bad, or worse than they did, I just honestly don't know. I think I just took off. So, but yeah, I still walk around police horses now. Big scary things.
The battle lasted throughout the morning, and in all, police made over 100 arrests as the scuffles ebbed and flowed.
There was this young lad, he fell over, you know, he could have arrested him, police officer. But he didn't, he decided to drop on him with his knees, and he were giving him a good idea, not fly. And I went up and from behind, and I knocked the police officer off him, well, pulled him off him. And then I just felt a crack on my head, and I went dizzy, and somebody whacked me with a truncheon, and I was arrested.
I felt a pain in my arm like I've never felt. I'd been put in an arm lock. I don't know what it was, but I was nearly bent double. There were obviously lots of swearing going off, and as I'm being marched down road then, so I'm other side of 10 deep coppers or whatever it was. Next thing, there's a massive wag on the side of my head. Fell in an heap, and I can remember I was being kicked in the head. After a while, the copper said, "He's had enough, Sarge." And they just dragged me off. Then took me on a cell bus, like a coach, but it had all little cells in it. And it were red hot. This was 30th of May. It was red hot on this bus. And I remember trying to put my elbow, it started swelling up by then, onto any metal to see if I could cool it down. Anyway, a bloke shouted across to me from another cell. He says, "Hey, kid, you." I said, "What?" He says, "Are you all right?" I went, "Aye, I'll be right, why?" He says, "They were kicking the fuck out of you in that corridor." I says, "To be honest, it's my arm." He says, "They were kicking shit out of you, kid."
Today's scenes represent probably the worst violence in an industrial dispute since the war. They've clearly alarmed both sides and will lead to more pressure for a speedy solution. But the government shows absolutely no sign of compromising, as Mrs Thatcher made clear today.
There are those who are using violence and intimidation to impose their will on others who do not want it.
I will never negotiate with people who use coercion and violence to achieve their objective. They are the enemies of democracy. They are not interested in the future of democracy. They are trying to kill democracy for their own purposes.
1984 into 85 really made us politically aware. And
it made us political villains.
Yeah.
The media painted us as or you're left wing, you're this. You want to destroy it as way of life and the enemy within. What a fantastic thing to call people.
You know, it reinforced my view on the government. Made me more determined, really, to see it through. You know, I mean, I didn't have a penny to scratch my backside with, but you know, I used to keep a pocket full of change, about 20 pence, and just used to go like that. That just kept my spirits up, and especially over Christmas, you know. To say we lasted 12 months, I think we did really, really well, because we had nothing, you know, but we did it because we still had this belief that we could win.
So I carried on picketing and fundraising, but Nicola started getting ill, 3 years, 4 months old. The doctors thought it was meningitis. It turned out to be a tumour in her brain. Gone from one of the healthiest looking kids you could imagine to downhill. The only bit the bits I can remember that stand out is looking like she was just asleep but with wires on, and I can remember Diane asking if she could hold her. Probably one of the most beautiful sights you could see, in a sad way. I did a daughter. I made a decision that we offered that they could have her kidneys. And I know it blew doctors away because normally they have to ask, but I think that's the practical side of me that accepted that we couldn't do it for Nicola, that's it. So yeah, she passed away. What do you do then? Different era, no counselling, no real support, just be careful when you drive home. Obviously tears rolling down his face. I think best description when somebody's lost a kid came from my ex-wife when she said, "John, it feels like somebody's squeezing my heart." And that does sum it up. It does sum it up. They sent a bloke to the house and he had rotten teeth, and I remember him saying, "There's no money, that's rules, that's as it is." But then lads on picket line all took the quids in. They were on their asses, they didn't have much money, but they had a whip round for us. And people started finding out about it. It turned out that part of Union, a local part of Union, like an area part of it, paid for Nicola's funeral.
Britain's longest-running national strike is over. Amongst scenes of bitterness and anger, NUM delegates voted narrowly for an organised return to work on Tuesday.
And my personal feelings are of overwhelming relief. I want a prosperous coal industry, obviously, but the privations that some of those families have been through, and that have been back earlier, had it not been kept going by intimidation, and I'm very glad now that they can go back.
Is there to be an amnesty for those miners who were sacked?
Those miners who have in fact beaten up others, or who've intimidated families, or who've done immense damage to property, they must take the consequences of their own action. And it would not be right if there were an amnesty for those who really have committed terrible crimes. Not right at all.
So then that was it. The strike was over. Quite proud marching back. We stuck it out. It was strange. There was anger you'd lost, anger we'd been set up, anger that, you know, we'd given all that, and where would it lead? I don't think anybody imagined then.
It's a long time to be out fighting for something that you believe in, to go back. I mean, there were a lot of nervous people because we had been out on that picket line, and there was talk about that there was going to be, you know, management are going to be looking at people who've been heavily involved in strike, and you know, Les and John and myself to a certain extent will be targeted. And don't think it was like that, but they certainly did make life a wee bit more difficult for you. The year prior to us closing, we broke the 1 million ton mark. And we were very, very proud of that, you know, very proud of the fact that we'd done that. Even though we were going against NUM guidance, our desire was to keep that pit open, but it worked against us. So they ended up where us, despite producing 1 million tonnes over that year, they closed us down.
Crazy thing, I took my 2 lads to watch headgear pull down, big headgear. Giants falling, crashing, and a way of life gone. But obviously then I didn't know how my life would pan out. I could probably say it's the best thing that happened to me. It shook him when it did, but I wouldn't accept that for all others. Some never worked again. Some people weren't capable of it. You know, there's certain people... I stopped a lad stealing coffee in Featherstone the other day, and drugs had had his effect. Obviously not sharpest knife in drawer, but he'd have been in pit. There'd have been a job for him in pit. He'd have been earning money. He wouldn't have been stealing coffee. I'm rubbish at cricket, but they're desperate. And really, the point of me helping out this year is because they're really short on players. And it'd really be a shame if the community lost the cricket team. But it's strange playing at cricket ground at Ollerton because obviously 2 headgears used to be in background above houses. But it is strange, you know, after all these years that they've gone. I think the best way to deal with it is to let go of anger. It really is. If you can let go of anger and get on with your life and say, yeah, but we're still miners. It don't matter, until last miners died, we're still miners. You know, just people still say, what are you? I'm a miner. It's going to stay with me till the rest of my life. It's part of me and me. I don't know, it's in my genes. Definitely in my genes. There comes a point sometimes when you might have to throw up a sponge. You might have to be one that says, no, enough's enough, like in strike. We either stood and fought, or they pushed us over. I'm glad I stood and fought.